The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free.
Everybody needs to know their history.
The thing is, what do we do next from this point?
We're going to live like human beings. We're going to recognize the diversity, importance, and value in all people.
It's no longer history for us. Right now, it's an everyday experience that helps us to understand.
They say it's Independence Day, 4th of July, but no, Juneteenth is always Independence Day.
You know, it has been very warm out here all day, but this lawn was packed during this morning's event. And take a look, people are still showing up. They've been doing this all day long because they want to honor Al Edwards and they want to commemorate this day.
So Juneteenth is everyone's opportunity to celebrate what the country was and to acknowledge that we are those enlisted to make sure it's never that again.
Standing in front of a statue honoring his father, Al Edwards II carries on his legacy.
Deciding we're going to live like human beings. We're going to recognize the diversity, importance, and value in all people. So the message for today is truly celebration as inclusively as ever. Which I think is what my father envisioned.
Former state representative Al Edwards sponsored legislation in 1979 to make Texas the first state to name Juneteenth a state holiday. He's the one who organized the annual celebration here at Ashton Villa, but he died 5 weeks ago.
He was sitting right there just a year ago. So it's been difficult.
Social distancing requirements mean today's ceremony wasn't as elaborate as usual. But those here say they have never seen such interest.
It's kind of a watershed moment. We wish Dad was here to see kind of the acceptance, even in the last 6 weeks since his passing, that the United States has moved in this direction.
When I became a principal, he told me, use your platform and you don't be quiet about the important issues that you know are important to not only our community, but also the entire nation as well.
Thank you and happy Juneteenth.
Photojournalist John Mizwa and I have actually been here all week long learning a lot more about this holiday. Those who we have spoken to out here say that they hope that people continue to share their stories and their history. Reporting in Galveston, Pooja Lodia, ABC 13 Eyewitness News.
I'm honored to be involved in paying homage.
3 short documentaries that beautifully capture what it means to Houstonians, both prominent and ordinary, to celebrate Juneteenth.
The 19th of June was like the 4th of July.
Picnicking, family gatherings.
There were many celebrations that went on. People dressed up.
The films were part of celebrations back in 2016 and 2018 at Miller Outdoor Theater.
We never heard the really, really hard times, and I think they were trying to protect us.
The goal was to elevate the voices who know the stories, the history, and the memories. And to do that, Pat Jasper enlisted the help of a familiar face, ABC 13's Melanie Lawson, who conducted some of the interviews.
She really set a tone
that captured both the joy of gaining freedom as well as the pain of enduring slavery.
We honor and celebrate our liberation. And if we don't celebrate it, who will?
As the conversation around race in the United States continues to get louder and louder, Jasper hopes her work can serve as a reminder that it's incredibly important to listen to these voices.
And part of joining in the struggle is being there, but not necessarily taking the lead or taking the charge, but being there and hearing and listening and supporting and advocating as an ally alongside the rest of our community.
Felt like 90-year-olds have something to offer.
The urge to walk, engage, and educate about Juneteenth has been lifelong for Opal Lee.
I don't know, it goes a long way back.
Through the years, our cameras have captured her activism that is rooted in a deeply personal and painful place.
My family losing
It's home to racists, to people who didn't want us in their neighborhood. They burned the house down, drug out the furniture on the 19th of June in 1939.
Since 1980, the state of Texas has recognized Juneteenth as a state holiday, the very first to do so. It was in Galveston where Union Army General Gordon Granger shared the news that slaves in Texas were free.
Really? None of us are free until we're all free.
Lee travels the country pushing for a Juneteenth national holiday and walks 2.5 miles in each location to represent the 2.5 years that passed after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation before slaves in Texas were freed.
Going to have a caravan. Not going to be a big parade like we usually do.
Celebrations this year will be different because of COVID-19. Lee will still be walking her 2.5 miles, but this year beside a caravan in Fort Worth. And she is asking for your help, determined to gather 1 million signatures on a petition asking for Juneteenth to be a national holiday, something she would be delighted to see in her lifetime.
Girl, I'd probably do a holy dance. I would be so proud, so glad. I don't know what I'd do. I'd probably show out, you know.
So once he was out of slavery, he was able to share that information with the community.
Jacqueline Bostic is talking about Reverend Jack Yates, a remarkable real-life hero. Her great-grandfather established the first black church in Houston, Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, and the first black school. He also helped build the settlement known as Freedmanstown, or Fourth Ward. Yates grew up in slavery, but his best friend was the slave owner's son. After going to school every day, that son would pass on what he learned.
He learned how to read, do mathematics, and all kinds of things that the other people had not learned. And he couldn't tell anybody at the time he was a slave because he would have been severely punished or killed.
But once Yates was free, he passed on that knowledge, teaching others to read and write and the importance of buying property. He led a group of former slaves to buy the land where Emancipation Park now sits, a place where they could hold events, including their most important holiday, Juneteenth.
They came together, they would have large dinners where they would have barbecue and different kinds of food that they all liked, and family and friends. They would have parades where the women would be dressed up in their beautiful long dresses with big hats. They loved being free, and they never forgot to celebrate being free and understanding what community and family was all about.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up because that's the bottom line. Juneteenth was about being free, I know.
It's about freedom. It's
right.
About being free and being able to chart your own course and destiny in life.
I'm John Barrett, the great-grandson of Harrison Barrett.
And I'm Malcolm Barrett, great-grandson of Harrison Barrett.
Grandpa Harrison purchased the property shortly after the emancipation. And when he did that, he began looking for his family. They met Grandma Ann in New Orleans when he was with the enslaver. Want to move away from the term slave and master. He was enslaved, not by choice. And that's not something that any of us can relate to. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this story, particularly because it's a positive story in a turmoil scenario that we're going through right now. Even though they went through all of the things that they went through at that particular time, they got through it. And we'll get through what we're going through as well.
Every George Floyd, every kid, no justice, no peace.
Grandpa Harrison, again, purchased more property than any freed enslaved person during that period. In the process of doing that, he gave his relatives property, and the town began to grow from that point forward. Every year from that point on, they had a big production on the 19th of June. And it was always on his original estate, which is where we are right now. It was right out there under some trees. Those trees are gone now. I think that tree fell down what year? 1997. Yeah, that's a Juneteenth tree. It's really celebrated under this tree. It's a big, beautiful tree on October of 19.
To come to assemble together with his family with a rich heritage.
The Barrett family reunion has gone on for well over 100 years. So we have very rich history. We don't take it lightly. And at some point, we want to share that history and those stories with the world to let people understand that we're going to get through all of this. They got through it, we'll get through it.
When you think of Slag, you think of Houston.
Well, a lot of people always ask what's next for us, and you know, we did the march.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
Like I said, you know, which was a blessing over 70,000 people.
So what we wanted to do today was make this a Say Their Name peace ride, meaning we're going to represent all their names.
So many of us jumped on the front line for George Floyd, of course, because that was the homie. But I also want to let them know we appreciate how they stood up for us, so we're going to take a peace ride today for all of them, not just one. We want to make sure we get out there and we represent for everybody. That's why it's called Say Their Name.
So we got right here a 1955 Mercury Montclair. Using cars is a great opportunity to support any kind of cause, because there's a common interest there. I don't care if you're not a fan of the slab, but you look at one, you're like, man, that's a beautiful looking car. People look at them, it's like rolling pieces of art. And we got this Houston, Texas pride, and it just stays in us.
Look like we're going to be swinging in the rain today, but it's all good. We're going to be doing it for Juneteenth for a good cause.
I believe they're going to shut down the freeways for us to do our thing, man. It's strength in numbers when a lot of us come together across the world.
My shirt FREE stands for free, but not really. We are enslaved institutionally and systematically, but according to the federal government, we are free.
On Juneteenth in Midtown Houston, a group of young men meet with Mayor Sylvester Turner at the Shape Community Center, known as a safe haven.
It's a great opportunity because it allows me to speak for the younger people of Houston.
Derek Childress Jr., born and raised in Greenspoint. He says the goal is to not only spark change, but to see it through. It was a 1-hour-long conversation with the city's mayor about police reform, investing in the community, and the need for more impactful youth programs.
What is clear is that there's a great deal of distrust, there's a disconnect, all over in our communities, and we need to take steps to reduce that level of distrust, mistrust, and open up the channels of communication, and it has to go both ways.
Childress says he walked away with hope, but he says the conversation and the push for change doesn't stop here.
Be bold, be courageous, always stand up for what you believe in, and never stop fighting for being black. Black is beautiful, and we're powerful, and it means everything to me to be black, and I feel like everybody should be proud to be black in the midst of whatever we go through 24/7.
Roxy Bustamante, ABC 13, Eyewitness News.
Today and show support for our local community as well as for Fort Bend County. And so this is a long tradition for our family.
Well, I think it's very important that even in spite of this pandemic, we came out here today. It helps our children to understand what their forefathers have gone through. I think they've kind of been sheltered by not having to live through that. It's no longer history for us. Right now, it's an everyday experience that helps us to understand that we still have a long way to go, even though we've come a long way.
It's very inspirational because since Black people's lives are important, everybody else's lives are important. So it's good that everybody's coming out here.
This is one of the places that he read the Emancipation Proclamation.
Now a popular wedding venue, Ashton Villa was once headquarters for the Confederate Army. And on June 19th, 1865, It was from this very balcony that slaves in Texas learned they were free.
It took 2.5 years for the Emancipation Proclamation signed by Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln, to reach to the South.
Back in 1980, State Representative Al Edwards helped make Texas the first state to declare Juneteenth a state holiday. But just as plans for this year's celebration were being finalized, Edwards died.
One of the things that I promised Al Edwards was that we would keep his memory alive. And so his efforts, as well as the Juneteenth celebration of what it meant to the state of Texas, that's what we're celebrating.
This year, you won't see the same crowds as usual. Only 150 people will be allowed on the grounds at a time, and everybody is required to wear a mask. It's not the celebration many would have preferred, but at a time when so much is uncertain, it is a renewed focus on history, what got us to this point and what comes next.
The motto is always give back, and that's what I'll be trying to do, and that's what this community tries to do.
What's now Reedy Chapel AME Church was once called the Colored Church. When it was founded in 1848, enslaved people were only able to worship outside. And when Union troops arrived to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation more than 20 years later, this was the first place newly freed people came to celebrate.
It's very important to me because my great-great-grandparents came here at the end of 1865 with their children, one of whom is my great-grandfather, who died only less than 2 months before I was born.
You can still follow signs of Juneteenth history all around Galveston.
Following the surrender of Robert E. Lee to Ulysses S. Grant, Texas was still a Confederacy, and slavery was still being practiced.
If you've been to the Strand before, you've stood at the very spot the Union Army chose as its headquarters after the Civil War. Historians say it was on the balcony of former Confederate Army headquarters Ashton Villa that General Gordon Granger first announced to Texans that all people were free. Then another announcement at the Galveston County Courthouse. And here's the order from the Galveston Daily News. 155 years old now, but a constant reminder of the equality so many continue to fight for.
It's important, and I had a lot of family members here when I was a child, but time has gone on.
Driving around Galveston today, you might not realize the history around you.
It's really been a story that Galveston has been able to try to get out for years.
Union troops arrived in Galveston 155 years ago this week to announce all people were free from slavery.
Essentially, slavery ended on that day. He was able to declare the new freed slaves, defining them as having absolute equality.
Back then, Galveston was the biggest city in Texas. On the Strand, you can see where the Union Army chose as its headquarters after the Civil War. On June 19, 1865, historians say General Gordon Granger stood on the balcony of Ashton Villa to announce the enforcement of the Emancipation Proclamation. He made another announcement at the Galveston County Courthouse, and afterward, newly freed people celebrated at what was then called the Colored Church.
Galveston became one of the more prosperous cities, particularly for African Americans.
155 years is a long time, but not if you really think about it.
It's very important to me because my great-great-grandparents came here at the end of 1865 with their children, one of whom is my great-grandfather, who died only less than 2 months before I was born.
The people are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free.
It has been 155 years since the order was announced from the balcony of Galveston's Ashton Villa. But if you ask actor Stephen Duncan, the words are worth repeating.
I hope people take away that most fundamental message. All slaves are free. All people are people.
Duncan has played the part of General Gordon Granger in Galveston's annual Juneteenth celebration for the past 5 years.
It has 2 stars because he was a major general.
But this is a man who wears many hats.
I'm the Director of Fine Arts for Galveston Independent School District. I am a bishop in the Orthodox Catholic Church of America. I am a Board of Directors member for the Galveston Railroad Museum.
This year, Duncan has also become a peaceful protester. And even though social distancing means the Juneteenth celebration will be much smaller than usual, he's hoping people will still hear those 4 words he is so proud to say.
All slaves are free. With that phrase, the United States changed, and changed in a way that I think is nothing but good. Do we have a lot more to do? Oh yeah. Are we where we're supposed to be? Not yet. But that was the day when we started to be who we really could be.
This tree is one of our crown jewels. And it contributes not only to self-support, but also the society and the neighborhood in its totality. This tree is important to the nation and Missouri City because this tree is over 500 years old. This tree sat on a Palmer plantation, and this is the area under this tree that the inhabitants, the slaves of the Palmer plantation, found that they were free in 1865. I feel a great connection with this tree. Some say if you put your hand on this tree and listen very carefully, you can hear the moans and groans and also a communication with the inhabitants. This is also representative of blacks in the United States. Regardless of what conditions there were, they made a significant contribution to whatever endeavor they took part in the United States. From military to civics to legislation, just being good citizens.
If you have ever celebrated Juneteenth in Galveston, former State Representative Al Edwards probably had something to do with it. He died 5 weeks ago at the age of 83.
They used to call me his sidekick. For all my life, he hasn't just been a brother. He's been a real influence on my life, even up to today.
David Edwards grew up watching his older brother march for civil rights with leaders like Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and Reverend Jesse Jackson. And he supported his brother when he headed legislation in 1979 to make Texas the first state to name Juneteenth a state holiday. The law was so controversial at the time, it only passed in the final 24 hours of the legislative session.
If anyone takes from Juneteenth, is the importance to vote and make your voice heard.
The main thing out of this is for our young people to know what Juneteenth is, what an outlet was meant to Juneteenth, and how important freedom really is.
COVID-19 concerns meant the family couldn't give Edwards the memorial service they wanted. And those same concerns mean you won't see these same crowds at this year's Juneteenth event. But protests have brought renewed attention to the holiday, and this family hopes Friday will be a chance to honor Edwards' legacy of perseverance.
Today, of course, Black Lives Matter is a very important issue, but life mattering started. One of the roots of it started when we became free instead of being slaves.
They held an annual picnic on Juneteenth.
Award-winning actress Felicia Rashad became famous as America's Mom on the Cosby sitcom, and later a star of the big screen and the first black woman to win a Tony as Best Leading Actress on Broadway. But she grew up in Houston.
Then attending Jack Yates Senior High. My father also attended Jack Yates.
The city was segregated then, so she remembers an amusement park called Playland Park, where blacks could only go on Juneteenth.
And my parents would never let me go. They said, if you can't go every day of the year, you're not going to go.
But that didn't matter because there were always huge celebrations on that day.
Juneteenth was very important. There weren't a lot of proclamations in those days, and there certainly weren't programs of remembrance and things of that nature. But people came together. People came together as churches, as civic clubs. People came together and commemorated that day with gatherings, with barbecue and red soda water and just fun in a community. But it was very special, and we knew that it was a very special day.
And for her, Juneteenth has always been doubly special.
It was also my birthday, so my birthdays were always spectacular because there were so many people, so many children, not enough cake, but plenty of barbecue and red soda water.